Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about the fearful attachment style, otherwise known as the disorganized. I made a general video outlining all the attachment styles. You can check that out to get a full overview of what attachment styles are, why they're important, and the four main attachment styles. And in this video, it's about the most difficult attachment style. The disorganized attachment style is the most difficult to work with. It's the most difficult to also explain. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go over the etiology of how it forms so that you get a better understanding of it. So the reason why this attachment style is called disorganized is because there's no clear organization of how the person relates to other people, how the person relates to the world. So for example, with the avoidant or the dismissing attachment style, the person has a clear strategy. They minimize their emotions, they're uncomfortable with the emotions of other people, they fear intimacy, and you know what to expect. It's pretty clear and coherent. They're going to try to maintain their independence, they're going to get overwhelmed when there are too many emotions, and they're going to use strategies to distance themselves. With the preoccupied attachment style, the person is afraid of being abandoned, and so they have this sense of lack of safety, insecurity. So they're going to try to get their partner to respond to them. They're going to be checking on their partner. They're going to be looking for validation, looking for reassurance. So there's a very clear strategy. Now with the disorganized attachment style, it's chaotic, unpredictable, and it doesn't seem like there's a clear strategy. The person both tries to get close to the individual and also tells their partner, whoever they're dealing with, to go away. So come here, go away, come here, go away. And that behavior can seem very erratic. And it's very confusing for the disorganized individual. It's also very confusing for their partner and anyone else that has to deal with this person with this style. Now, also, disorganized attachment style, it can come and go. So, for example, somebody with maybe an insecure attachment style that gets involved in a relationship and gets highly triggered can also develop some of these weird strategies. And then it can be different in a different relationship, or maybe something in their life changes, causing them to become a little bit more stable. So it's not necessarily like persistent throughout life, but this style of attachment can come and go, or sometimes it could be persistent. So this person, considering the two views of how the two components of attachment is they feel pretty bad about themselves. They feel, pretty unworthy, unlovable. They have low self-esteem. And then they also feel pretty bad about potentially having a relationship. So they see other people as fundamentally not trustworthy. They have some negative views on relationships, negative views of potential partners. And so those are the two components that make up the disorganized attachment style. How this starts is usually in childhood. With this particular attachment style, it usually spurs from some form of childhood trauma. And so imagine the baby, for some reason, fears the parent and sees the parent, the caretaker, as a figure associated with fear. And this could have been maybe the baby was mocked by the parent, some form of emotional abuse, sexual trauma. Maybe the parent hit the child. Maybe the parent left the child crying for a very long time. There could have been role reversal, where maybe the parent actually used the child to soothe their own emotional needs rather than taking care of the child. So something very traumatic. And so the child both fears the parents, but the biological need to get close to another human being is there. So this child might, for example, scream for the caregiver to come, And then when the caregiver comes, this child can shut down, turn away, and try to push the caregiver away. So it's a competing strategy. A, I fear you, but B, I still need you to be close to me, to feed me and to take care of all of my basic needs. And so what happens as the child grows up is they develop a style that's relating to their parents that, so two things can happen. The one is they can become very hostile to their parent, very punitive to their parent. They can, become very angry, become very rageful, become very rejecting. Or the complete opposite, they can start fully soothing their parent, at the expense of their own needs, and they can go out of their way to take care of their parent as much as possible. And later the child starts to prefer people, maybe when they're in middle school and have a little bit more of an opportunity, a little bit more agency, they start to prefer people that are not their primary caregivers. So maybe they can try to attach to the parents of their friends, their teachers, and maybe some, officials in their school. And they're actually very lucky if they get that reparative experience, if they actually find a good role model that can also take care of them. But usually they start to disregard their caregivers at a pretty early age, and they start to look for other people. In adolescence, what this can turn into is when you look at external behaviors, so how these people behave, externally, it could be a lot of aggression, rage, some defined behaviors. So these guys can, get in pretty big trouble in school. Particularly, this is prevalent in boys over girls. The boys generally tend to externalize their negative emotional states. The internal negative state is going to be filled with sadness, anxiety, depression, some really negative prevailing emotions as a child. And this can also result in things like self-injurious behavior, like cutting, things like that. This could result in dissociative behaviors too, so kind of trying to block out of the world. And it could be like social avoidance, not trying to make friends, not trying to be part of the group. It could be maybe spending a lot of time playing video games in front of the computer. It could just be like zoning out in the room. So trying to not engage in many social activities, trying to disengage from the world. And this, of course, leads to a myriad of other problems that then reinforce this attachment styles. So school officials are going to be punitive. Teachers are going to be punitive. People are going to, if the child is socially withdrawing, very likely they're going to get bullied on top of that. And so then these negative experiences in adolescence, they're going to start adding up. And the worldview of this child is going to be, the world is dangerous, people are out to get me, everyone sucks. Sometimes these kids might join gangs, and that helps them to find like-minded people that are also going against the authority, going against the law. So they want to cause a lot of turmoil, cause a lot of chaos. And then these children grow up and they might find themselves in a romantic relationship. And that, the biological need to attach, the biological and emotional need to be close to someone is always there. No matter what the attachment style is, no matter how much people try to deny it and become independent, they're always going to somehow end up being in some form of a relationship. And so fear is the prevailing feeling of the disorganized attached. And so unlike the insecure, preoccupied, that kind of fears abandonment, or the avoidant that fears intimacy, the disorganized person seems to fear the partner itself, him or herself. So they actually fear the person that they are with, and it's prevalent. And so on one hand, they try to attach to that person, and on the other hand, they're highly suspicious and they're like, go away. So the same thing, kind of like come here, go away strategy remains, and it's confusing. And with this attachment style, once again, it's also kind of adds up. So people are in these relationships, and the trauma of relationships keeps adding up, because when they start to behave like that with other people, they're more likely to get rejected, they're more likely to create some kind of, traumatic conflict. And so then that idea about themselves of being fundamentally unlovable and the world being fundamentally an untrustworthy and dangerous place that you should fear kind of becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And so in the relationship, there could be kind of like a lack of impulse. And that can result in aggression, chronic anger, maybe some violent outbursts. Like these people, one moment they could be loving and everything is going fine, and then they're just going to go ahead and say something super mean to their partner, just like really hurtful, because that fear is going to arise in them, and fear makes it very difficult to make logical decisions. Fear makes it very difficult to control impulses. So that's one thing that can happen with the disorganized attachment, is that they're just going to lose control. They're going to hold it for some time. They're going to lose control, and they're not going to have enough control, over their behavior, and they're just going to, say something absolutely terrible to their partner. They also hold their partners in pretty negative light. So, they pay attention, they're pretty hyper vigilant, just like the preoccupied attached. They pay attention to what their partners say, what they do, little details, and they're going to use that selective attention to look for all the potential moments of potential cues for abandonment, or potential cues for why their partner thinks that they're not good enough, or feelings of unworthiness. So they're going to use the selective attention, and then they're going to focus on these traits, and they're really going to get profoundly hurt. So the other part of all insecure attachment styles is that with insecure attachment styles, you have kind of a difficulty managing your emotions. So when you have emotions, there's some unhealthy coping mechanisms, and that lack of impulse that makes people kind of do things that they might regret later out of their character generally, is that inability to regulate emotions. And so these people can get wounded fairly easily over things that maybe other people would take lightly, wouldn't think is such a big deal. The disorganized attachment styles can get quite emotional and really, really lose it. Another thing that can happen with the disorganized attachment style, both in childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, is that dissociative qualities. So they can also freeze. So, for example, if somebody is being not kind to them, being mean to them, maybe their partner is kind of throwing some negative emotions on them or saying something mean, they can freeze. It's just an absolute freeze response. And this happens frequently to children who are abused as frequently to people who are abused as children, because they learn to disassociate from their fear. So if for a person with a secure attachment, if that happens, they can either fight or flee. They can choose to leave the situation and say, oh, this is it's not okay with me, or they can kind of stand up for themselves and assert their boundaries. Don't talk to me that way, things like that. People with this attachment style, they don't know how to deal with conflict. They've never learned. The way that they had to learn to deal with some form of emotional chaos is basically to just wait till it passes. So maybe if their parents were fighting, or if their parents were abusing them, they would just like freeze for a little while, get out of their body, and then come back in when they thought it was a little bit more safe. So that's the other thing that frequently happens with the disorganized attachment. And if they're in an abusive relationship, it can be really a vicious cycle, because let's say if their partner is abusive towards them, they might freeze and they take on the partner's anger, and at the time they don't react, but it kind of seeps into their body more and more and more. And then that also causes them to go through these cycles of being passive aggressive to their partner, to experiencing lots of anger, to experiencing lots of rage, and that's going to come out in all these disorganized ways. So the freeze response is the other common response for the disorganized. And actually this freeze response is that's the response of the person that's getting ready to die. And that causes so much stress on the nervous system. They can cause all kinds of physical symptoms, just to be in that state, neither here nor there. So it's really sad. This is the most difficult attachment style to live with, to be in relationships, to just hold as an individual. This is also the least common attachment style. So the least amount of people with all the insecure attachment styles would have this disorganized attachment style. And you can change your attachment style. You can work towards a more secure attachment style no matter where you are. And you do that through two ways. One is being in a relationship, and the other is working on your self-awareness. So in a long-term relationship, it could be with a therapist, it could be with a friend, it could be with your current romantic partner, it could be with your future romantic partners. And working on yourself is watching videos like this, learning about attachment styles, learning where you fit in. I included a link with the attachment questionnaire that you can take and also rate yourself. Learning what your patterns are, getting into your emotional states instead of your thoughts. What are you feeling rather than what you're thinking? Because that's going to help you switch into understanding yourself better and be a little bit less reactive, and thus create more positive experiences for yourself as well. So subscribe to my channel, because I will be making more videos on attachment and how to work with it to work towards a more secure attachment style. Check out my workshop for adult children of alcoholics. If you grew up in a home where maybe drugs or alcohol was abused, it is an 8-week program. You can also sign up for a coaching session with me. The link is included below. And have a great week until I see you next time.